tell me what you see about 2024.
There are going to be a lot of moments in 2024 where things get amplified. With 2024, but we have a lot more energies of planets coming together and fusing.
We have a special episode where we are looking into the astrology of 2024, what you need to know and what you can embrace as we dive into this new year. I am joined with the lovely, the amazing Aliza Kelly. Aliza is a real rising star in astrology. She has such amazing insight. She's a real mystic and I just love her. We met last year for 2023, peer into the themes, and it went so well. Everyone loved it so much. We decided to do it again. Aliza is very pregnant and I'm so grateful that she has agreed to chat to us as she is on the cusp of this threshold herself. So listen up, and a reminder, if you want to explore more of what the year ahead has for you, the Work Your Light Visioning process is available. It's an amazing workbook and process where you can get clear on what you're wanting to release before you step into the year ahead, and how you can really dream into how 2024 can be just such a wonderful year for you. I hope you enjoy this conversation as we dive into all that's in store for us in 2024. My gosh, 2023. It feels like every single year these days, it's like, oh my gosh, it's like a whole lifetime changing.
Totally. Yeah, it is. I mean, the stakes are always, these past couple of years, the stakes have just been very high every year.
I would just so appreciate your wisdom, your guidance. Tell me what you see about 2024.
So 2024 there's a lot of things that are very radically different about this year, this coming year, than the one that we just are coming out of 2023. And I would say that overarchingly, sort of, the big picture is that we have a lot fewer ingresses happening in 2024. So in 2023, we had Pluto going into Aquarius for the very first time. We had Saturn going into Pisces for the very first time. We had Jupiter going into Taurus for the very first time. And all of these ingresses, all of these beginnings of a planet through a new zodiac sign, have a really remarkable effect on the types of narratives and storylines that we're experiencing. So there were a lot of beginnings. There was a lot of newness that was happening in 2023. And I remember when we were talking about, what was to come in the year ahead, sort of reflecting on when there's a lot of new things, we really don't know, right? Like, we really don't know what that's going to bring and what that's going to happen. With 2024, we don't have as many ingresses, but we have a lot more powerful conjunctions happening, a lot of more powerful energies of planets coming together and fusing. So it's a little bit easier for us to sort of ideate on what that could possibly mean, because instead of this being something that is brand new, we haven't seen it in 12 years or 30 years or 248 years or whatever it is, we have more data sets that we can rely on. So it's going to be there are going to be a lot of moments in 2024 where things get amplified, where things are really loud, where we are sort of at this reckoning, where we're processing things that we have been learning over the past several years. But I would say that there's not going to be as many surprises.
That's so interesting. And is there a general theme, or is it kind of integrating what we've been through? Where are we with that?
Yeah, it's an integration. It's certainly we're getting to some fever pitch points with it, where we're at that sort of do you get the lesson yet? Do you get it? Are you here? Which is important, because when we reach those places in the cycle, we are sort of invited to step into presence and to step into a real state of awareness that we don't often get to access, especially if we're just speculating on what something is going to be and trying to predict the future.
Wow. And like in context of, maybe people are listening already in 2024, or maybe it's like end of 2023. But regardless, what's important for us to acknowledge or do to kind of like complete or reflect on like the themes of 2023 in order for us to step fully into 2024?
Well, there's some really important moments that are happening in 2024 that I think we should highlight. The first one is going to be taking place on Saturday, April 20th, which is going to be the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. Now, Jupiter stepped into Taurus last year in 2023. Uranus has been in Taurus since 2018. Taurus is associated with the physical realm. It's tangible, tactile things, which include our physical plane, which include the environment, which include the financial sector. So when we're thinking about Taurus, we're really thinking about sort of like, what is something that we can actually stand on and ground ourselves with. Jupiter stepped into Taurus last year, and it has really brought a lot of financial considerations into the forefront, both positively and negatively. I'm thinking about inflation. I'm also thinking about the fact that we had these like Beyonce, Taylor Swift, Barbie movies generating billions of dollars for the economy, right? So there was just this loud sort of like, what does it mean what does abundance and prosperity mean? Both the good and the bad of it, right? The absence of it and the excess of it. So we have Jupiter in Taurus, who has been very loud on those topics. Jupiter is the planet of expansion, abundance, so anything it touches blows up, right? It's larger than life. Uranus is revolution, change, shocking things. Back in 2018, when Uranus stepped into Taurus, we had a lot of speculation around what cryptocurrency was going to be, around Bitcoin. We have seen that sort of oscillate over the past several years. And then also big changes to our consciousness around the environment. Since 2018, it seems like, there has been just a lot of climactic events, no pun intended, that have been really brought our attention to this has happened. This isn't something that we're imagining in a future dystopian scenario. This is something really happening right now. So at the end of April, when these two planets connect, this is one of the biggest transits, one of the biggest touch points of 2024. I think that I'm predicting that we're going to see some really massive change relating to the economy and or climate consciousness. And that is something that we definitely want to be sort of aware of and sensitive to, especially because when we are thinking about these big picture, these big planets, they're not personal, right? They're collective. They're about what we're all going to be experiencing and facing. Now, another really important transit that's happening in 2024 that we have not experienced in any of our lifetimes is Neptune reaching the anaretic degree of Pisces. Neptune is the planet of illusion and delusion and creativity and artistry, and it has a really spiritual and magical vibration to it. When it reaches 29 degrees, which is a critical degree, it is a sort of the touch point before it switches signs and goes into Aries. This is going to be sort of that fever pitch moment of what have you learned since Neptune entered Pisces way back in 2011. So for a lot of us, especially those who are in the spiritual realm, we can probably track a lot of our breakthroughs around spirituality back to 2011 time, back to that period. So next year in 2024, or this upcoming year, depending on when you're listening, from May through September, so through a big chunk of that year, we're going to have Neptune at this really powerful reflection point where we can think, what does my spirituality, my creativity, my sort of collective understanding of what is going on in the world from these intangible sensibilities, very different than Taurus, what does that actually look like and what does that mean? So those are two really special happenings that are occurring in this year ahead.
Okay, so what were the dates again? April.
So April 20th is the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. And then May 3rd through September 3rd, we're going to have Neptune at 29 degrees of Pisces.
Wow. So that's quite a long period.
It is.
It's interesting. I love that it's linked to 2011. I've been feeling quite a bit lately like there's like a cycle ending regarding like my spiritual awakening process as well. Like, I think, they say that it goes in like 7-year cycles or whatever. And so I find that really interesting. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on, how everyone said, oh my gosh, 2012, like the world's going to end and then it's going to begin again. And then now we're kind of like, have lived on. And there was so much awakening happening. But really, we can reflect back on what we've lived into after and how much change has actually happened. What's from your perspective and astrologically, like that 2011, 2012 threshold, and then what we've been through now? Like, what are the echoes? What are the links?
Well, it's interesting because there's actually another one coming up. One of the things that I wanted to mention today, and I say tank, there are no coincidences. One of the things that I wanted to mention as we talk about 2024 is that we're hearkening a lot to 2011, 2012 in the transits upcoming. So we actually have another one, which is that Jupiter is going to be entering the sign of Gemini this year in 2024, which is going to be taking place really shortly after this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. It's going to be taking place in May. And the last time that Jupiter was in Gemini was 2012 through 2013. So we have this other sort of memory, this psychic memory of us coming back to that time period in our lives. And for different, everyone it was a long time ago now, right? It's 12 years ago. So for some of us, some listeners might be like, oh my gosh, I was like so little then. How could I even recall where I was? And for other people, it feels like yesterday, right? It's really easy for us to sort of pull back those memories and think about what was going on in our lives. But what I think is really fascinating about this sort of return to 2011 and 2012, and exactly to your point, there was this conversation about the world is ending, the world is changing, these calendar systems, and that has a lot to do with the information, the technology, the communication, right? The dissemination of how we are moving through society and moving through self. And with Jupiter in Gemini, we are going to be very curious about what's going on in the world around us. We are going to be very curious about the details. We want to get all of the little pieces of information. Jupiter in Gemini has an interesting sort of challenge that it faces because Jupiter is associated with big expansion, philosophy, sort of, large scale thinking. It is in its home base in the sign of Sagittarius. Gemini is the opposite of Sagittarius. So when we have Jupiter in Gemini, it's kind of working at a disadvantage because Gemini is really focused on details and nuance, speaking, communicating, who's doing what, what's going on over there, what are they eating at that table, whereas Sagittarius is thinking big picture, what does this all mean holistically? So with Jupiter and Gemini, we can get sort of bogged down with the details. And if you remember in 2012, especially as we're thinking about like the apocalypse and the world ending, it's like, what are the details, right? Like what are we going to need to know if this is really happening, if this is really taking place? And it was all about sort of like watching for those sort of micro moments of like, oh, yep, that's a sign. That's a bad sign.
And it was as if like something was actually like, it felt like it was going to like physically happen or something. Or do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what is it?
I remember I was at, I was in college, or I was finishing up college, and I was at this like music event, and there was this big cloud that came over the horizon. And it was in Minnesota in like the spring. So of course a big cloud is coming over the horizon. Like this is very typical climate for this region. And I remember myself and whoever I was with was like, that's it. You know, that's it. That's the cloud.
It's the end of the world.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's so interesting. Well, yeah, when I reflect back, it was such a powerful time for me, 2011, 2012. I went through a massive Kundalini awakening 2011, and then off the back of it, I like finally was like, oh my gosh, fuck it, I'm gonna answer the call, I'm gonna do it. And so I started my business over that, like literally over the 2011 2012 New Year's Eve.
Wow.
Maybe it was because I thought the world was gonna end. I'm like, oh well, I'll just face my
might as
fears.
well. Yeah. Nothing to lose. But I do think I think that a lot of spiritual people had breakthroughs at that time. I do. I have seen that time and time again in my practice. If you really trace back to when, you know, even just the seeds were planted, we could go back easily to that time period. Neptune entering Pisces, and then Jupiter followed up with Jupiter and Gemini. What are the details? What are the small sort of granular things that I need to know? So really interesting movement across these different planets, connecting, you know, hearkening us back to that time period. I also want to mention that we have a new eclipse cycle that's going to be starting in 2024, which ties into this really, also very effortlessly, which is that in the fall of 2024, so on September 18th, 2024, we have the first Virgo Pisces eclipse for a brand new eclipse series that's starting. We haven't had these eclipses since 2015 through 2017. Now we're starting to get into more recent history. You know, it's amazing. Like we're far enough away from those years somehow, even though it feels like yesterday, that we have gone through that, you know, it's going to be 9 years. It's 9 years since 2015. So Virgo and Pisces, especially, we're going to have, you know, so much mutable energy at that time in the fall. We're going to have Neptune in Pisces. We're going to have Jupiter in Gemini. We're going to have these eclipses on the Virgo and Pisces axis. So really the only mutable sign, because the mutable signs are Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces, which all have to do with change and transformation. They have this flexibility, this adaptability to them. They make us very sort of versatile in our interests. The only one that we're not going to have represented is going to be Sagittarius. So that means that we're going to need to evoke Sagittarius for ourselves at that time. We're going to need to evoke the principles of it so that we can make sure that we're well-rounded in our approach and we're not just focusing on details or perfection or Pisces, you know, the big spiritual vision. We also need to have our passion. We need to have excitement. We need to have joy. We need to have pleasure. We need to have fun. You know, those are the Sagittarius principles. So we're going to need to make sure that we are generating that for ourselves, especially as we get into the second half of 2024.
Okay, cool. So that's from like the fall. So September 18, you said from that on.
Yeah.
Be playful, have fun, and be adventurous.
Yes.
I love it. My daughter, I know your daughter, maybe Scorpio or a Sag, we don't know yet, but my daughter is a Sag, and I didn't know very many Sagittarians actually, and so I was thinking I'd be more comfortable with Scorpio, but oh my gosh, she's so much fun. She's just pure joy. So I love the Sagittarius energy.
Yeah, Sag energy is really just, you know, how do we maximize a good time? It's wildfire, you know, so wildfire knows no boundaries. It just wants to be free. It wants to explore. It wants to experience as much as it can in this lifetime.
Amazing. And are there any other like key dates to watch out for?
So I'm sorry to say that we have a Mars retrograde starting at the end of the year.
Oh no.
Yes, it's
End of next year.
end of
As
next
in
year.
this year if it's 2024.
Yes. December 6th, 2024. It's my personal least favorite retrograde. It is the rarest retrograde because it only happens every 2 years. It's a long retrograde, so this starts in December and goes until February. And it's the energy around it, a Mars retrograde is sort of like a, slow your roll, take inventory. Are you moving too fast? What's actually going on? So Mars retrograde kind of brings us to a halt. Now, because we're going to have this very late into 2024, in December of 2024, it's possible that by that time, we're going to be like, I need a break. That's okay. I'll take the Mars retrograde break. I'm tired. I have been taking on way too much. I'm overloaded, and maybe taking inventory and reflecting here is exactly what I need. So it's possible that the timing of this is going to feel just right for us. But it is one of the 2024 transits to watch out for. And then the last 2024 transit to watch out for is that we have Pluto going back into Aquarius. Pluto entered Aquarius last year for the first time. It only got to 0 degrees. In 2024, it is going to be moving to 2 degrees, which is not, does not sound like very much. But in Pluto talk, it is. It's a big deal as it relates to Pluto, because Pluto is an extraordinarily slow moving planet. So every single degree it sits on, it's sort of like we anchor ourselves in that place. We anchor ourselves at that degree point. So from 0 to 2 degrees, Pluto is going to be creeping closer, deeper into the sign of Aquarius. And this is going to be the last year, 2024, that it goes in and out of Capricorn before settling in permanently to Aquarius, where it will be for a really long time.
So what does that mean?
So Pluto in Aquarius is one of those planets and one of those sort of happenings that astrologers are making a lot of predictions around. But the last time it happened was 1777. So, a lot of things have changed since then. So we really can only sort of pair what the planet does with what the sign does. And then we're going to, my philosophy is that we then throw up our hands and say, let's see what's going to take, how this is going to manifest. Let's see how this is going to transpire. But what we know is that Pluto is the planet of transformation on the largest scale you could possibly be working on, right? So what are the largest scales that we could possibly be working on for humanity right now? A lot of it has to do with the government and institutions. A lot of it has to do with sort of countries and leaders and people in very major positions of power. We could also throw billionaires in there. They have a lot of power. They have a lot of money. So it's really people, individuals, and entities that are sort of really responsible for moving and positioning society, right? So that's what Pluto does. From Pluto entering Capricorn in 2008, a lot of astrologers, present company included, really see that as sort of the height of late stage capitalism. And in these final degrees of it, the recognition that there's a lot of issues with this. There's a lot of problems. There's a lot of, these institutions are kind of like hanging by a thread, a lot of them, especially here in the United States, where our healthcare system, for instance, is just like, as someone who is pregnant right now and navigating it, like I can truly say a complete joke. So when we're looking at these big institutions, these big concepts, we're getting to those final degrees of Capricorn. We're saying this really isn't working, something's wrong, something's up. Aquarius is the sign that is associated with revolution, progress, rebellion, innovation, technology. It's also the sign associated with humanity at large, with the people. It's a very populist sign. So what that is also signaling to us is that in recognizing that these systems are in need of some really like beyond a facelift, right? Like it's like we're past a facelift. We need like a real total rehaul of them. Aquarius is showing up and saying, well, what if instead of prioritizing power, instead of prioritizing money, instead of prioritizing, and like revering these like billionaire figures, right? Putting them on the cover of all of the magazines. What if we start to shift our focus to the people who are change makers, to the people who are thinking about others, to the people who are actually working for the greater good? So those are some of the Pluto in Aquarius hopes. There's also the Pluto in Aquarius fears, because Aquarius is associated with technology. There's also a lot of astrologers who are saying this is going to be the AI takeover. This is the downfall of humanity because we're going to out technology ourselves and make ourselves irrelevant. Perhaps, it's possible. There's lots of different ways that we could interpret something of this magnitude. But I am an astrologer who definitely, doesn't want to create more fear and anxiety in the world. So if I'm going to make predictions about something, it's going to be the ones that I feel sparked by, not the ones that generate paranoia and anxiety, because frankly, who needs more of that? We have enough. Oh my God,
we do not need more of that.
We have enough.
Oh. And so I'm curious, like, have you looked into like the years that precede, like that go after, like 2025, 26? Like, do you see like a kind of story arc happening?
I don't love 2025. Period. I don't love it. Based on from what I just said of someone who does not want to generate fear, let's save 2025 until after we see what happens with 2024.
Okay. Well, we're always changing our future through our present thinking and
it's true.
Acting and all of that. Oh, wow. And like if you were to say put 2024, like have some keywords of 2024, like maybe three phrases or three keywords, what would they be?
I would say breakthrough. Information.
Mm-hmm.
And patience. Though that is not one, that's a aspiration.
Amazing. And with us, the first couple of months of 2024, what kind of attitude or what type of thinking will support us?
So I think that recognizing that we are continuing cycles is really important as we step into 2024. Again, in 2023, a lot of it was like, okay, it's a new storyline, it's a new narrative. Let's plant seeds and establish ourselves here so that we can link our goals and our desires and our affirmations to these new beginnings. In most instances of 2024, it's going to be sort of a continuation of a lot of the seeds that we planted in 2023, even 2022. So we're sort of still working on those stories, right? Which is why patience is important, because sometimes, we're going to get bored. We're like, okay, I want to switch things up. Like, I'm over whatever I said I wanted at the end of 2022. I want something new now. But it's like, well, you got to see it through, right? We have to see through what our desires and our hopes and our intentions are, if anything, so that we can learn from them. It doesn't mean that we can't make pivots along the way. It doesn't mean that we're stuck. It doesn't mean that we're sort of like held responsible for visions that we had that we have outgrown. But at the same time, this is also a year to say, okay, how do I double down? How do I really continue to implement and affect change in a way that is true to my spirit? Now, if you set intentions or you came into 2023, so we're going back in time now. Whenever we talk about a new year, we're doing pregnant. A lot of time traveling. Yeah, you're pregnant. I'm not. Whenever we go back in time, we could say, well, the things that I wanted then, now I realize they weren't actually aligned with my truth. They weren't in my best interest. Can I change it now? Or am I stuck? Am I trapped with these, antiquated and sort of inauthentic ideas about what I wanted and who I wanted to be? And the advice that I would offer for someone who's navigating that is to allow that change to start to arrive organically. Even if, just the awareness of like what I wanted, I actually didn't really want, or I wanted it for the wrong reasons, like that is a breakthrough in and of itself. So as you continue to move through that cycle, you're going to keep getting these messages, you're going to keep getting information, you're going to keep being guided to sort of, choose one route instead of the other, or make this decision instead of that. It's still your story. It's still the continuation of your story. It's just looking very differently than you anticipated. And that's a beautiful thing.
I love that. I've seen so much of that actually, just with friends and students of just kind of like it's felt like, particularly with the Venus retrograde, it's like everyone's like simplifying and getting clear about like what isn't aligned, what they don't want even more than what they do want. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that, a really interesting sort of like a pop culture manifestation of that is everyone getting their fillers dissolved, right? Like there was this not that long ago where everybody was like getting the most fillers in their face imaginable, where they were like puffing themselves out like blowfish. And now we're moving into this like we're saying we went too far. That wasn't really us. We don't even look good when we're that puffed out. So there's this movement to getting your fillers dissolved, or like embracing aging, and not in a gimmicky way, but in a really like, I feel better looking like myself than I do looking like the face that everyone else has on Instagram.
Right.
And I think that is kind of, that's the growth, right? That is an example of the type of journey that we're on of self-actualization. And it might not seem like one because that is like such a, working on such a superficial level, but as above, so below, right? Like it is reflective of some changes that are happening within the collective.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. It's been brilliant to do this yearly date with you. And wish you all the best with your beautiful baby and your birthing, and 2024.
Thank you so much.
I just wanted to let you know that the Work Your Light and Your Visioning process is out now and available for instant download. It's a process and workbook that I've crafted over the past 8 years. It's something that I do with my husband and my loved ones always at this time of year. And I actually created it at this time of year because I was looking for a way to just really end the year that was and fully step into the year ahead in a way that was like really deeply aligned with the wisdom within and what my soul was really truly calling me to do. It will help you get really super clear on what your soul's calling you to do and step into in the new year, as well as release those things that are no longer in alignment. It'll also help you break it down into really tiny, achievable steps that will really help you integrate what's rising within you into your life. Want something to do with your loved ones, or even just something to do yourself at this time of year, getting ready for 2024, then head over to RebeccaCampbell.me/visioning and you can download it instantly.